I wish I could tell you that I've always been naturally willing to play big and risk failure, or that I've coached myself through my own limiting beliefs without any outside help, or that I've always had the grit to keep going in pursuit of a goal when everything inside of me wants to quit. Well, spoiler alert, I haven't. And maybe you are able to create success without having any outside support, but if I'm being totally transparent, I have never made massive leaps in my own personal growth without first creating massive accountability for myself. And today, we're talking all about this, all about how you can do the same thing and how to know if you're ready to make bigger financial investments in your own next level of growth. Welcome back, friends. Today, we're talking about one of my favorite topics, and that is growth, personal growth. And I think it is really and truly the reason why we are on this planet, is to make progress and to grow into the best version of ourselves and use what we've learned to help other people do the same. And I am just going to be really honest. This is something that's been asked on a few different podcast interviews where I've been interviewed lately. And it's this whole question of how do you keep yourself motivated when you really want to quit? Or how do you push through when your self-doubt is really loud and threatening to stop you in your tracks? And so I'm going to get into all of this. Truly, hands down, the biggest leaps that I've ever made in my own growth came from investing in myself at a level that stretches me. And usually that does mean investing financially, which I'm going to talk more about, and just in the end, creating massive accountability for myself. And in doing so, I've really learned just the power of putting myself in the room with like-minded people who are on the same journey as myself, or learning from those who have done what I want to do rather than trying to figure it all out on my own. And it also has come just this sense of accountability from declaring my goals publicly so that people around me will not let me quit on myself. And I've definitely used that in order to help me push through some of the roadblocks that I've felt internally as I've been growing. But before we get into like the full goods, all the juicy goods that I have for you girls today, and guys, if there's guys listening, I want to share a little bit about, this whole topic. This entire episode is really dedicated to something that is the reason behind why Lori Harder and I created Event Love, which you've probably heard me share about. But if you haven't, and this is your first time hearing about it, Event Love is our 5-day immersive boot camp for people who want to be speakers or event hosts, people who know that they are meant to share their message in a bigger way and know that they're meant to use it to impact others. And the kind of growth and next level results we're going to talk about on today's episode are exactly the kind of results we've designed this whole experience, this 5-day experience, to produce for you. And if you know that you are one of those people who is meant to be on stage, you can picture yourself standing in front of an audience and pouring into them, sharing your story. If you know that you're meant to be speaking on stages and transforming lives with live events or workshops, maybe it's working with people in more of a mastermind setting, then I am telling you, this is the room that you need to be in. It's taking place in January in Phoenix, Arizona. And we're not only going to teach you just some of our speaker secrets, things that can help make you more confident when sharing your message in front of an audience, but we're going to help you further clarify that message so that you can speak directly to the people you know you're meant to impact, and then create next step offers. So actually, how do you turn this into a viable business and create things that your audience will line up to buy for you because you have created so much value for them? And there's so many things that go into planning an event. If you've watched the journey and the growth of Powerhouse Women and how fast our community has grown over the last 2.5 years, it's a science. There's a formula to it. It's not accidental. And Lori has done the same thing with her Bliss Project event over the last 7 years. So we are coming together for 5 days. We're going to teach you everything we know about hosting events that make a massive impact. Of course, that's a given. Of course, that's why you are feeling called to create an event, because you want to impact people in a positive way. But we're equally passionate about teaching you how to make that event profitable and how to create a business out of it, because we do believe that events can be both transformational and profitable. And maybe you're in a place right now, you've hosted a few events, but you can't quite figure out how to make them more than just a passion project. Or I've talked to a few women who are starting to feel like their events are more like an expensive hobby at this point. And they don't know. They don't know if they can continue to give and serve at that level if it continues to drain their energy and their bank account. And the thing that breaks my heart about that is so many women start to doubt if they're really meant to do this work at all. And I can't imagine a world where people stop fulfilling their calling because they couldn't figure out how to make that profitable to the point where it can actually sustain their livelihood. There are so many things that we can offer you, so many ways that we can show you exactly how we've done it, and we want to help. So you are exactly who we created Event Love for. If this is speaking to you, you can go to eventlove.com, and that's love spelled L-U-V, and you can learn more. If you're like 80% sure this is for you, but you have some questions, you can even book a call directly with Lori or myself. So it's all at the website, eventlove.com. It'll be linked in the show notes, but just know that as we dive into the topic today, if you can't get the feeling off your mind that you are meant for more, you're meant to serve in a bigger way, and you want to start to create a business that includes live events, then this is the room you need to be in. So listen up, and I'm curious to hear if any of you start to feel that nudge during today's episode. So let's talk a little bit about just this idea of creating next level results, massive next level transformation in yourself, and growth at the level that you feel deep down you are meant to experience. I shared in the intro, I wish I could tell you that I've just been naturally motivated and this has all come really easy for me. But when I was asked recently on a few podcast episodes about how I've gotten myself out of my own way, right? I use that term all the time, getting out of our own way. When I think about it, it comes down to two things that have, at the end of the day, been the things that have kept me going during the times when I've wanted to quit, or I feel super uncomfortable and super confronted, because those times have happened. They actually happen frequently. And the first thing, and you've heard me talk about this before, is just remembering who this is really all about. That when I'm feeling stretched, when I'm feeling scared, it's usually because and if I'm listening to the part of me that wants to quit, it's usually because I'm focusing on myself. I'm focusing on, I don't like how this feels, I feel super uncomfortable, or what are other people going to think about me? And instead, I have to shift my focus and remember who this is really for, which it's not about me. It's 100% about who I will serve, and that is also why you are feeling called to do something bigger. It's not about you either. It's 100% about who you will serve. And then the second thing for me is I have had to put myself in situations that create massive accountability, because I know myself well enough to know, at least if I'm talking about in the beginning stages of my journey especially, that when things in life would get really uncomfortable, or when I would go to attempt something I'd never done before and didn't have the evidence that I would be really successful, the moment it felt hard, the moment I felt any resistance, my mind would logically come up with reasons why I shouldn't continue. Now, those reasons would always sound really justified, and maybe you found yourself saying things like, well, it's just not the right time. This isn't the right season of life for me. I don't really have the space in my schedule. And we know that all of that is like complete BS. If we're really committed to something, we will always find the time. We will even find the resources, the money, in order to make something happen if we're 100% in. And sometimes for me, just drawing that line in the sand has made all the difference, meaning going all in on myself, going all in on an idea, And one of the ways that I've had to do that for myself, for me, what has really worked especially is just creating massive accountability. And nothing creates that kind of accountability for me like making massive and super uncomfortable investments in myself. And yes, I'm talking financial investments. I'm just that kind of person where if I create the right kind of pressure to push me beyond where I would go on my own, it can be really productive. Now, if you know yourself that creating pressure in an unhealthy way is just going to detract from your progress, then that's not what I'm talking about. For me, nothing else has worked as well as this. And I really, deep down, I wish this wasn't true, because honestly, it would have saved me a lot of money if I could have just figured this all out on my own. But there's two moments for me that I think back on when I think about this whole topic of massive commitment, massive accountability, and yes, financial investments that stretched me at the time. And the first one was actually the start, truly like the birth of everything that you see now as far as Powerhouse Women. And what happened was, you've probably heard me share about it before, but I was approached by my good friend Dr. Laura Bush, and she approached me about writing a book. There was a webinar program that she was a part of, and it was all these aspiring authors and entrepreneurs. So these authors were all, for the most part, people who had a message that they wanted to get out in the form of a book, but had the common denominator that they were also entrepreneurs. And I don't know what came over me when we were having that conversation. I've shared like the full story before, but there was something in me that said, if you don't do this, then what? What else is going to come along? You've said no to so many opportunities. You've had all these other big ideas that then went nowhere. Like the podcast equipment that I had bought 6-7 years ago and is still collecting dust in my closet. There were all these things that I saw in my past that I hadn't followed through on. And something about this said, okay, well, maybe if you actually put yourself on the line, you have something invested beyond just your word, maybe that would be enough to help you finish, like actually finish something that starting out you didn't know if you could do. So what would happen is over this, I think it was like 16 weeks long, I would show up on these calls. I was so uncomfortable. Like you really need to just like picture. I would ugly cry before I would show up on the calls, because what we would have to do is we'd have to come to the call prepared with like 1,000 words of writing. And as a recovering perfectionist, the worst thing in the world is to show up and read a rough draft of something in front of people before it's perfect, and then have them give you feedback, because feedback to me was always criticism. Now, of course, it wasn't. The feedback was super constructive. It was always loving. And what would happen is what I thought was my worst fear, people giving me feedback, turned out to be the best thing that ever could have happened, because there would be days where I would get to the point of so much discomfort thinking about someone actually reading this book that I was working on. Like, that was my biggest fear. It wasn't that people wouldn't buy it. It was that people would buy it, and then they would have some judgment about it or criticism for me. And so it was starting to get real. Like, I was starting to be at the point of having half of a book written and realizing that this was going in the direction of actually becoming a real book. So I'd show up on these calls and I would be so set on delivering this perfectly planned speech for why this just wasn't the right time for me. I had a lot on my plate, another business that needed my attention. I was just going to put this on the back burner. And without fail, I would just muster up the courage to at least show up on the call. And it just like almost brings me to tears thinking back. Every single time I showed up and I was ready to quit, this group of women would stand for me. And it wasn't like they even knew that I came in with the mindset that I was ready to quit. They would end up sharing an encouraging word or would remind me why I had started writing in the first place. No one ever knew that I had showed up that day to essentially resign and tell them that, like, peace out, I was going to finish this book later. And putting myself in that structure of accountability and a structure of where I was surrounded by people who were on the same mission as I was, it changed everything because I didn't want to let them down. These were essentially women who were part of the demographic that I was writing for. These were women that I wanted to impact. So on the days that I remember just being so pissed too, because I would be like, dang it, like I was so ready to quit. And now like you reminded me why I can't. And so I would dry my tears and I would keep writing and keep working on it. And I never would have had some of the most beautiful breakthroughs had I not put myself in a situation where I would have given up on myself a lot easier. But I wasn't willing to give up on those other people. And then the other person that I didn't want to let down was my husband, who had, when I said, okay, I'm going to write this book, I want to do this program, and, totally was my biggest cheerleader. And I knew that I didn't want to go back to him and say, hey, that couple $1,000s I invested to be a part of this program, yeah, that's not working out. I'm just not going to finish. And not like he even would have been upset. He probably would have been so supportive. But I was not willing because I had people counting on me. And I also had finances, a few $1,000s invested in this program. And I wasn't willing to not complete it. So even if I cried my way through, even if I finished and my book sucked and it was the worst book in the world, I was going to finish. And actually to this day, 3 years later, I'm still the only person from that group that actually finished and published a book. And I really want you to get, that's what happens when we put our word behind a really scary goal. Everything in you is going to challenge you because setting this goal is challenging everything inside of you. And you have to grow in order to finish it. So I can confidently say, had I not made that investment and put myself in the community of other people who were not going to let me quit, that this podcast would not exist, Powerhouse Women as a community or a live event wouldn't exist. And I would definitely say I've gotten a huge return on that initial investment, but more than anything, I have gotten to know myself as someone who finishes things. And I wasn't reliable to do that and have that breakthrough by myself. I just wasn't. And then the second really turning point or point in my own journey that I knew I was ready to invest at a higher level. It was a little over a year ago, and I was starting to feel like I had a really great start. What we had created within Powerhouse Women was incredible. And I was starting to hit a point where I couldn't clearly see my way to the next exponential step of growth. I could see how I was able to continue building at the pace that we were building, but something in me was like, no, okay, this is ready. This is ready to go next level. It's time to really treat this seriously and take this seriously. And during that time, I was so I used to meet up with a couple other entrepreneurs and just do a mastermind, essentially. And we would just meet and talk and share ideas. And a girlfriend of mine said, hey, I'm looking at this mastermind, an elite level one that you actually invest money in. You should do it with me. And it was funny because little did she know I was kind of searching for something. I was looking for mentorship to show me the way to take things to a new level. And it was crazy because I had no context for this. I had done no research, but something in me just said yes. Something inside of me just knew that this was the kind of thing I was looking for and the kind of experience that could propel that next huge exponential quantum leap of growth. And so a mastermind is essentially, it's a group of entrepreneurs who are typically in all different industries. It kind of depends on the one that you join, but it's so incredible to see people who have had their own wild success, and they're so willing to share exactly what they did to get there. I mean, a mastermind is just an incredible way to get ideas from people in all different industries who have different backgrounds. And one of the biggest things that I can say this experience did was it wildly expanded my own financial mindset. Like what I thought was possible to create in terms of impact and income. And it taught me a lot about working smarter, not harder. I put myself around people who were creating leverage, who knew about how to scale businesses. And it quite honestly, I mean, just talking about the financial investment part, this was the largest investment I had ever made in anything at all, including my car. It was so scary. At the same time, there was something in me that switched into this mode of, I know I'm ready for more. I know I'm ready for the next level of investment. So I'm not even going to entertain the thought of, I can't afford this or this isn't responsible. It became a matter of, okay, if this is an investment in my business, number one, what is my business plan to make sure I'm getting a return on this investment? It was like this switch in my mind flipped from, can I afford this? Can I not? To, I know I'm ready for more. How am I going to make this happen? And then how am I going to make sure that I'm getting a return on this investment? It literally raised the stakes so high that to me, failure was not an option. And I'm always happy to answer more questions about this. I mean, I can do like a whole other episode on it if you guys want. But the purpose of this is to talk about like just making those investments. And the dollar sign doesn't actually matter. What matters is that it's a stretch. It's aligned with where you want to go. You're learning from people who have done what you want to do. And the price should feel like a stretch. It doesn't matter if it's a few $100s, a few thousand, multiple thousands. If the price stretches you and it's also feeling like a full body yes on every level, like you just know in your gut that this is something you could learn from and that could absolutely create that exponential growth for you, then it becomes a matter of, okay, how do I make this work for me? And then how am I going to get the best return on that investment? And I can honestly say, out of that experience, I have stepped into opportunities that in the next year or two will more than 10 times my return on that one investment. But that didn't actually come until almost the end of the full year experience. So I'm going to share a little bit more about that in this next piece, where I want to talk a little bit about, because I've had some questions after I posted something similar on my Instagram, just of how to really know if you're even ready to invest in yourself at a higher level. Now, again, higher level is whatever it means to you. If you're starting out, you've never invested at all, maybe investing in like a personal development course at $500 seems like a really big stretch, then that's what I'm talking about. If you've been in business for a while and you've never invested in something like a coach, a mentor, a mastermind, then you're going to know kind of what level you are at. But how to even know if you're ready to invest at that next level? The first thing that I thought about is times in my journey where I was not ready. I was not ready to invest because I wasn't currently in the level of action that was already producing results to my full capacity. So what I mean by that is you need to have something in place, meaning actions. You need to be on the court producing some kind of result that a mentor could even mentor you on. So I see a lot of people who feel scared, they feel stuck, and they're really expecting a mentor or a coach to inspire them into action or to motivate them. That is not the reason to invest in yourself, at least at a really high level. It's not the reason to hire a mentor. A mentor is not there to inspire you. They're there to take the action that you're already in, give you some new perspective, some new ideas, and help you refine your process and see blind spots so that you can move forward faster. So if you're at a place where you're like, I'm not sure what to do, I'm not really taking the action steps, or I'm not really that committed to doing so, then I'm going to share at the end some things that you can be doing in the meantime before you're ready to really invest at a higher level to get yourself there. because it's not like you just sit around and you wait to be ready. Obviously, there's things that you can be doing and a lot of free resources that you can take advantage of. And then the second piece, and this is going to circle back to my experience in that high-level mastermind, is you're not only, the first one was you're not expecting that the mentor is going to inspire you into action. The second one is you also can't place any expectations on a mentor or a program, a personal development course to be the thing that changes your results. You have to understand that you are the only one that can do that. And any outside influence from a mentor, a personal development course, you name it, is there to guide you and to provide you with some new tools. But you are ultimately the one that is going to change your results. And this was a big eye-opening experience for me. Having made that investment in the year-long mastermind, I remember showing up to the first weekend. So we had like these 4 weekend retreats throughout the year. And I'm like kind of embarrassed to admit this, but I want you to know, like, this was a stretch for me. And I remember thinking deep down, I would never say it out loud, that okay, I invested so much in this. Let's see what this group has for me. You better impress me with how much you changed my business, because I really put myself out there. And it was funny, throughout the course of the weekend, I found myself realizing really quickly that it was not the mastermind or the people in it that were going to change my results. It was me. It was fully on me. And at that point that I took radical responsibility for my own results and my own performance, that was ultimately what led to the change. And then being responsible from that context, leaning in and gaining everything that I could. So I would set up calls with the people in my mastermind, the other participants, and I would learn and just, dig into what had helped their success. I would just utilize every opportunity that it had provided. And ultimately, that is what led to the different results. It wasn't, there's no magic formula, and there's no one perfect course or mastermind or program for everyone. You're going to know what's the best for you based on what you need. But the biggest thing I can share about how to know if you're ready to invest at that level, if you're ready to fully take responsibility, it's 100% you. And any outside force from something you invest in is just there to give you a new perspective, some new tools, and to help you along the way. So maybe you're finding yourself right now and you're listening to this and you're not quite there yet. You're not in a place financially to invest, or you just know that maybe there's a little bit more internal work that you want to do before you're ready to invest. And that's such a beautiful place to be in. There's so many resources available that I wanted to give you a couple of things that I did to grow myself before I was ready to invest at a higher level. The first one being, if you're listening to this, gold star, you're already doing it, is keep plugging in to things like podcasts, let me say that correctly, and just other free resources or resources within your budget. If you look around and find people who are doing the work that you ultimately want to be doing, and they have proven results, so you want to make sure you're learning from people who've actually gone before you and done things that you want to do. Most people have free resources. I mean, that's why we created this podcast, is to be able to give incredible resources away for free to anyone who wants to listen. And there's a ton of low-cost resources available if you're really looking. So find the people that you really align with, people who you want to learn from, and then dig in, look on their websites, find out if they have podcasts or a YouTube channel, and just learn as much as you can by really looking at not just the things that they're teaching, but what is their mindset? What are some of their habits? How do they present themselves to the world? Sometimes just even observing the way someone operates is the best way that you can learn from them. And then The other thing is, and this is something I actually mentioned that I did, you can actually create an accountability group with other like-minded people. You don't have to invest in, a mastermind experience or a group coaching course. Again, if you're ready for that level and you want to be stretched to another level, that can be really productive. But if you're not at that point yet, find another group, find a couple, 2 or 3 other people who are just on the same journey as you. Maybe you're all building a business, or maybe you're all moms and you really want to, just like learn about parenting and you have a common interest. So it can really be built around anything. That you can create your own structure and accountability group that will work for you. And this is something I've actually used a lot over my own journey, is just setting up a monthly meeting with some other entrepreneurs, or it could even be virtual. It could be online or using Zoom webinar, and connecting on a semi-regular basis just to hold one another accountable and share what you're working on. I mean, it takes a lot of commitment. It definitely works best if you have a group of people who are all totally bought in and are going to show up regardless. But, and even if it takes a little while to find those people, it's something that I highly recommend. And it's something that even still I participate in, even when I am part of paid groups. And then I think that you should always be looking for the next stretch investment into yourself for whatever level you're currently at. So again, if you're brand new, maybe the next stretch for you is buying a book or an online course or registering for a live event that you have to save up for. There's something about making a financial investment in your own growth that is a game changer. And again, I would love to tell you, you can just figure this all out on your own and you never have to stretch, but you should feel stretched by an investment that you're making into yourself and your business if you have one. That stretch that you feel means that you're growing. And for me, this is just my personal experience, sometimes just making the investment was the exact breakthrough that I needed to have. And the way I look at it is, it might feel at the time like I'm parting with money, my hard-earned money, but it's really a trade. I'm trading a little bit of my money to get a lot of my time back, because yes, I probably could have figured out how to do all this eventually, but why figure it out on my own when there are people out there willing to share their knowledge, willing to mentor me, willing to pour into my growth, who've done exactly what I want to do. So the savings of I don't even know how many years of having to figure that out on my own is always worth the amount of money that I invested and traded to get those years of my life, not back because I'm like pre-investing in this growth journey, but to be able to save myself those years of having to figure it out on my own. And you know our motto, we're not meant to do this alone. So I'm just really encouraging each of you to do an assessment. Where are you at in your life? Where do you want to be? And if you're not in the phase and you're not in a season right now where you're ready to invest at a higher level, then plug into some of the amazing free resources available, and then start to, in your mind, prepare yourself to make that next stretch of an investment and find the things that really align with you, the coaches, the mentors, the events, and just notice what resonates with you and what's really calling to you, because typically if you're feeling that, it means that there's something there or there's someone you're going to meet there. And I just want to keep this conversation going because I think it's ongoing. I'm right now looking at, okay, what's my next investment going to be? Where am I putting myself in a position to grow? And I would love to hear from you. And I'd love to keep this conversation going in our private Facebook community. So I want to know what's one of the best investments you have ever made in yourself? I want you to plug into the Powerhouse Women community on Facebook, share your thoughts, read examples from other people. If you're kind of stuck and you're not sure what the next step is for you, there's a lot of great suggestions and resources there. And I have just a quick favor to ask as we wrap this up. If you've been loving this podcast and you've been finding value, or you just find my stories entertaining, I'm sure no one is going to say that, but if you've been finding value just in the podcast itself, would you do us a huge favor and go to iTunes if you have an iTunes account, and you can click under ratings and reviews to, of course, leave a 5-star review. If you have a 1-star review, you can just keep that one to yourself. We don't need that one. But if you have a 5-star review, I would actually just love, and it would be such a contribution to me, to this show, if you would leave a review and then actually write a comment. So it's kind of 2 steps. It asks you to pick the number of stars, and then it actually gives you a little writing box where you can, share a comment, share what you've loved hearing, what you want to hear more of, any topics you want us to cover. That feedback is so valuable, and it might seem like such a small thing. It literally takes 1 to 2 minutes, but it makes such a huge impact. And I want you to know, I literally could not do this without you, our girl gang, and I definitely wouldn't want to do it without you. So until next time, thank you so much for tuning in, and I can't wait to connect in the Facebook group and just hear what are some of the best investments you have ever made in yourself.